Hates of Nisvadin. How does one verbally confess? What does one say? Omer on Hashem. You say, please God. Chotosi means I've sinned inadvertently, if the transgression was inadvertent. Avisi, I've sinned deliberately. Deliberate doesn't mean defiantly, meaning I succumbed to temptation and therefore I sinned, but it was deliberate. Poshati, I've sinned defiantly.
He's on mute.
Which is considered the most extreme level of transgression, defiance. Lefonecho, before you. I've sinned before you. Despite that you were aware of everything, I bucked the system. And you were relevant to me. And then you articulate exactly what the transgression was. Let's say you spoke Lashon Hara. You spoke something you shouldn't have said. You did an action that the action was inappropriate. Whatever it is, and you verbalize it, I did such and such. Hari nichamti, I have remorse. Uboshti, b'maseh, and I'm ashamed of my actions. So he's mentioning there's the shame aspect. And I make a commitment, I will never go back there again. Now, this is not simple. How many people could say, I will never go back? But the quality of the commitment has to be, I will never go back there again. So let's talk. Person, let's say, has an uncontrolled mouth, says things which he shouldn't say, inappropriate things, speaks critically of other people where it has no constructive value. And as a result of that, it's classified as Lashon Hara. As a result of that, you're in violation of multiple positive, negative commandments. And a person makes a commitment and he realizes he speaks out of turn, out of line, he shouldn't say many things, and he really has remorse. But it's not enough to have remorse. You have to make a commitment. I will never speak. I will never go back there again. You tell me, unless you're really good at it, it's not a sincere commitment. How can you say you're not going back there? We know as much as you don't want to speak, you're going to speak. But if the only way it's considered the Teshuva process, which rehabilitates you, and you're forgiven, you have to say, I will never go back there again. How many people could say, I will never go back there again? That's the question. And many things we do. You know, there's always some degree of regression. We regress. We slip. So how could a person say, I will never do that ever again? Never go back there again. So there's a famous word from Rabbi Shol Salanter. He says we have 13 attributes of mercy. One of the attributes of mercy is the nakeh. Hashem is willing to take partial payment, partial cleansing, and he forgives you. I'll give you an example. Let's say a person speaks uncontrollably, without any level of consideration, without any compunction. He speaks his mind. And the person says, now that I know I did the wrong thing, he says, I will speak 5% less Lashon Hara than I spoke the previous year. 95% I can continue. Because I have to be truthful and honest with myself. It's not possible to say I'm not going back there. But I think 5% I could handle. You know, it's like you go before the judge. The man held up 6 banks. And he says to the judge, you know, I don't know if I could really make a commitment not to all the banks, but you know something? Instead of holding up 6, I will only hold 5 banks. You know what they can do to this character? They can throw him in the clinker. What do you mean 5 banks? You're a bank robber. With Hashem, that's not the case. Even if you're willing to lessen your transgression, even that Hashem values. 5% less Lashon Hara. Even though 95% aren't going to continue speaking. Because that's out of my control. As a result of that, that's the attribute of mercy that Hashem is willing to deduct despite the fact that the major balance is there.
Very
So you could say, I'll speak 1% less. Anything that you make a level of advance in Hashem values that. I'll give you an example. A parent, the child goes off, and the parent is tremendously pained because the parent has a special love for the child. And the child wants to come back. And the parent knows the child wants to come back with ulterior motive. The parent doesn't care.
Is that okay?
All the parent wants, my child, I want you to come back. What your motive is, why you're coming back. If you're back, you're back.
Go back.
Hashem says, something, whatever you give me, I'm happy to grab it. That's the difference if you go before the judge or you go before a parent. A parent has such a degree of love for a child that any nuance of improvement, the parent grabs it. And as a result of that, that's v'nakim. So although you can't make the full commitment, and it's considered infinitesimal compared to what the record's all about, but because of the dynamic of the relationship between ourselves and Hashem, we say, Avinu Malkeinu, Hashem's our father, he's our king. So he's not only our king, we're not only subjects, but we're his children. As a result of being his children, as a result of that, any slight movement, Hashem embraces us. And he's willing to give us every opportunity.
No, to make it bigger.
Therefore, we're able to say, but you have to be honest with yourself. You can't say, I will never speak Lashon Hara again. How could you say that?
Yes.
As a result of that, being honest with yourself, therefore you minimize and you're truthful to yourself, I will speak less. And I will try to address the rest of it. It may take years, but nevertheless, I want to get there, which is also part of the value of
I don't know.
of the Teshuva process.
Muted.
1 second. Okay. Any comments on this?
This is what you've always taught us. You can't say never, but you can say, I'm going to make an effort to do less.
Not an effort to make less. Not an effort to make less.
I'm going to do less.
You're going to do less. You're going to do less. Not an effort.
No. I'm going to do.
A person, he shows up every day late at work. And the employer says to me, something? There's so much work to be done. You coming late, it's costing the company a fortune. Either you come on time or you're out of here. So he says, I'll try. Here I'm telling you, we're bleeding because you're not coming on time. You tell me you're going to try. Do me a favor. You're terminated. What are you going to try? No, it's not I'm going to make an effort. I am committed. I'll take maybe less responsibility, but at least that less responsibility, I'll be committed to that lesser responsibility. Not have greater responsibility and say, well, I'll only address a fraction of it. Then you're not there. Okay. Larry, what do you say?
I was a little distracted, Rabbi. I don't have anything to say at the moment. Thank you, though.
See, if you look like Walter Cronkite, like Shmuel looks with those things on his ears, maybe he's distracted. Okay.
Thanks. I just want to talk a little bit
Only
about
thing he's missing is the mustache. The mustache.
no
Okay.
mustache for me. Not allowed.
Okay.
Too scratchy. And just getting back
Okay.
to the Rob, I'm trying to put myself in his place. He probably honestly thinks that if he's robbing 6 banks, if he goes down to 5, that's really good because he's maybe thinking, if I'm 100 pounds overweight, I'm not going to lose it in a week. You got to do it gradually. You can't go cold turkey. I guess what he doesn't understand is the analogy is not valid. I mean, robbing banks is obviously against the law, and there's no rationalizing even robbing one. So you can understand his logic is flawed, but he thinks he's doing the right thing.
But with this, let me tell you what the positive part of this is. With the Sultan, where Satan goes and tells you who you're fooling. You think you're going to smell like a rose behaving this way? You don't eat kosher. You don't keep Shabbos. All of a sudden, you don't speak Lashon Hara. Who you trying to fool? One thing has nothing to do with another. Being careful what you say, you're doing the right thing. You do other things wrong, it doesn't mean to say you have to total fail. Whatever you do right is right. But very often, people interpret that to be hypocritical. It's not hypocritical whatsoever. It's a very important point. People say, it's too late. What I have to change, it's like moving mountains. But whatever you change has infinite value. We say that when you do one mitzvah, the value of a mitzvah is unquantifiable. And that's why God is not able to reward you for mitzvah in this lifetime, in the physical world. So if you do one mitzvah, even though you don't do other mitzvahs, but what's the value of doing the mitzvah? Unlimited worthiness. So what's Satan tell you? It has no value because you do all the other wrong. One thing has nothing to do with another. But you're supposed to do this every day. If you can make $1 million every day, why only doing one day? But one day I've made $1 million. Same idea. So let us not shortchange ourselves by being foolish, by throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I may not do a lot of things, but whatever I could do, I want to do. So the Rambam says the level of commitment is, I'm not going back here ever. You know, it's interesting. You know, a parent is supposed to be a role model for his family. And we know what is a role model? Do as I do, not do as I say. Do as I say means nothing. If you walk the walk, then we could talk about being a role model. You talk the talk and you don't walk the walk, you're not a role model. The example I always give, a person gives his son a lecture in being truthful. You should always speak the truth. And the son with the wife is eating dinner. And all of a sudden the phone rings. The son takes the phone. And the person wants to speak to his father. His father says to the son, tell him I'm not here. Yeah, this is what the father tells the son. Here he's just giving him a lecture, being honest. And he tells him, tell him I'm not here. So what kind of role model are you? I mean, when it's in your interest to not say truth, you say don't say truth. But if it's okay, there's no loss of saying the truth, you say the truth. But that's not a role model. That's called hypocritical. You know, you're two-faced. It's a two-faced person. And if you think you're going to get away with it, be impressionable for the son, you're not a role model. The same thing. We carry responsibility. The Chofetz Chaim writes that when you raise children, raise a family, and you teach them only to say things which are appropriate, not inappropriate, if the parent himself is not careful, you can teach your child from today forever. But if you fail and he sees that you're not carrying out what you preach, so to say, then your child is not going to keep it. So you have to be so careful when you raise a family, whatever you teach, you have to actualize those teachings to your family. Time writes in one location that, you're not supposed to, during the prayer service, there's certain areas you're not supposed to speak. For instance, at the time of the reading of the Torah, nobody's supposed to speak. You're supposed to listen. And very often, you have people who sit on the eastern wall in the shul, the most prestigious membership, and the rabbi. And it's right before the reading of the Torah, and they begin a conversation. And before they read the Torah, let's say they say Kaddish. You're not permitted to speak during Kaddish. And these people are speaking right up front, in front of the whole congregation. They're speaking while Kaddish is being recited, which you're not permitted. And the conversation goes on, carries on, even into the reading of the Torah. And these people are carrying on with the rabbi. He says, you know what this is? He speaks, he goes in and delineates all the violation, transgressions that they're a violation of. But he says, the most serious is Chil Hashem. You're desecrating God's name publicly. You're supposed to be the role model of what a Jew's supposed to be. And how do you behave this way in public, where the takeaway is not a good takeaway? That's the Chafetz Chaim. Other things, it's rabbinical, it's this, it's that. But what about Chil Hashem? It's a desecration of God's name. And the same thing, a person who's a Jew and he's looked up to, and there's a certain code of behavior which is expected by society, and you don't behave that way. That's Chil Hashem. I'll give you an example. Person is a businessman and he's a very astute, and whatever he does is within the law. But everybody knows when you do business with this person, it's cutthroat. That's how tough it is. This man doesn't let you get away. He doesn't give ice in the winter, as they say. That's how tough this guy is. You want to know something? For an ordinary person, it's okay. But if you are seen as an observant person and a God-fearing person, the takeaway is not a good takeaway. Although if you go ask the law, the lawyer and everyone else, everything was 100% legal. But the two things, there's legal and there's what? There's appropriate behavior, admirable behavior. It's not admirable. It's not admirable whatsoever. And if the takeaway is not admirable, and you say, you know something, that's something I don't want to be, and you speak about that in a critical way, that person's behavior is called Chil Hashem. That man is desecrating God's name. So when we do Teshuva, and you articulate your shortcomings, there are many things people don't articulate because they don't see the shortcomings. They say, you know, when you play in the big leagues, you play hardball, you have to be in the leagues to play hardball. Otherwise, you don't believe in that, belong in that league. But if you're a God-fearing person, it's not a rule of thumb. There's still a certain level of code of behavior and sensitivity and ethic and moral standard that you have to maintain because of what you stand for, what you represent. He should live and be well. He celebrated his 100th birthday already. Nobody could sell a diamond the way Mr. Glick sold a diamond. He sold diamonds, 40-carat deflawless diamonds. He had customers that nobody else had his customers. The sheiks of Saudi Arabia were his customers. When you wanted to buy that any kind of diamond from him, he was very tough on the price. When it came to charity, open hand, millions of dollars, help people. He even took people in as partners into diamonds to give them the ability to succeed in business. He didn't have to take them in. He could afford to own the diamond himself. But to give another person a basis for a livelihood, he would take him in as a partner. And he would even lend them the money to be a partner in it. And he would only take it out of the profit when he would sell the diamond. That's the kind of person he was. But when it came to the sale, he said, that's my price. So we're not saying he wasn't tough, but he did it in a very nice way. Some people, when I say cutthroat, I'm not saying he's a tough businessman. I mean, you know what I mean? Business is business. It's fair within the type of transaction you're doing. But the behavior, how do you behave during that transaction? How do you make the person feel who's sitting on the other side of the table? I can tell you something. I'm not going to take this off the recording.